Good evening, everybody. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast on a Monday. That must mean it's time for your weekly Calamity Jane livestream. James, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing just dandy as
Excellent.
usual on a Monday. As
Lovely.
dandy as you can be on a Monday.
On a Monday. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I want to I want to compliment you on that smooth opening.
Oh, well, yes, it was flawless. I will
That
give
was
myself
pretty
that today.
good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it was a very well delivered opening.
You know, I do what I can. I practice in the mirror 1 or 2 hours a day, so it's not that long.
Yeah, because
Right. I mean,
we
yeah.
we're a well-oiled, fine-tuned, well-oiled machine here over at
Yeah, there's no question about it.
Kalamity.
So, yeah, I mean it's only 1 or 2 hours a day. Just that those
That's
three
good.
sentences or so. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, life balance is important.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, you don't want to overdo it, and then the words lose all meaning too, right? You want to bring spirit
Yeah,
and heart into it. If you're just reading the words, why say them anyway, right? What's the point? So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Um, let's see. Yeah, I'm doing great. It sounds like you're doing okay for Monday as well.
Yeah,
So
for a
that's
Monday.
good.
Yeah, for a Monday. Yeah, exactly.
Um, so I mean, just kind of getting into some of the work stuff. So today's
Yeah.
gonna be a little bit different. We're gonna be kind of patchwork quilts type of stuff. I do have a scene I'm gonna work on
Okay.
maybe, but we're gonna talk about writing stuff here. But it's not. I don't. So Eric and I, we typically will work on a script. Like Eric works on the script, and we talk about the story. So you and I will go back and forth, Eric, on a story and talk about different beats and stuff like that. But during the course of Eric's first script, which I loved in the first place, and now we are now down at iteration, I think five or something like
Oh
that. I
God.
can't remember.
Well,
Yeah.
five that you've seen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I can't imagine what rabbit hole Eric has gone. What you've gone through.
The dead
He,
drafts that I have on my computer it would make Mario blush.
yeah, but we've gotten to a point where I think you and I are pretty happy in general with the feel of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you've adjusted a few lines here and there, so I'm not sure how we. I don't know what the baton handoff is. I don't know whether you want to talk about the script on your
Well,
side, or
yeah. I
what.
mean,
How
I
do you want to
think
do this?
when we started showing them some of the animatics and our pitch deck and a few things to people, one of the notes that they got back was the awkwardness of the relationship between Leon and Calamity. It was a little bit too abstract. They were trying to wrap their heads around the nature of what the relationship was to each other, and uh, I think it was your wife who suggested, well, why don't you just make them related? And we're like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, that's a great
yeah,
idea. And so
yeah.
we didn't want to go the father daughter route. So instead, we added a little bit of separation between the two of them, and so Calamity now has an uncle in Leon, rather than just a partner in crime, rather than sort of a Batman and Robin sidekick kind of thing, which is what she started as.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, in the original, Leon was the protagonist, and I think we've talked about this at the, on the stream, so I won't belabor the point too much, but we just every time we showed the original draft to anybody, they were like, "Oh, you mean like that movie Rango?" and
mhm,
and it didn't matter how much time passed, unless you just weren't really particularly into movies. It always like, "Oh, you mean like that movie Rango?" And then when we
mm,
changed the protagonist to Calamity Jane, who again was going to be a sidekick character for Leon, that confusion went away. But then there was confusion about the nature of the relationship between those two. Now, Leon dies in the first act, which is not a secret. And that's the inciting incident that sets Calamity off on this journey that is ultimately what becomes the cartoon. And so we needed to have him in there. It wasn't we couldn't just cut him out of the show. So we decided to make him an uncle, like I said, but that necessitated that we rewrite a little bit of dialogue to make it work, right? To sell, to inform the audience that in fact they were related to each other, and rather than Calamity wandering aimlessly into Drago Gorge, which always felt unmotivated to me, but I never really had a better way to get her there.
mhm,
Leon being her uncle actually helped because he could tell her, go here, right? Seek out these people. They will help you, right? And now, because of that, she actually has a motivation to head towards Dry Gulp Gorge in the beginning of Act 2. And so it's a stronger connective tissue to justify, um, one scene to the next. Because that's really always, that's one of the things that any first year writing teacher will tell you is that as a general rule, unless you're transitioning from an A story to a B story, in which case it gets a little bit more complicated, but any scene within a particular story that comes immediately after a previous scene needs to be motivated to go that scene, right? As one scene ends, it needs to be justifying why they're going to the next scene, right? And we were somewhat lacking in that in the script, and so making Leon Calamity's uncle really helped us solve one of those problems. So what I did is I went back recently, because you're going to be spending some time with your family, including our lovely voice actor who plays the role of Calamity, and we wanted to make sure that we could get those lines while you had access to her. So I went in and I modified the script a little bit. There were some changes that had to occur in Act 1 and a few changes that had to occur in Act 2. And so I went back and reworked the script a little bit to not only build in the relationship aspect of the two characters, but also punch up a little bit of the lines. As Da Vinci said, art is never finished; it's always abandoned. It's only abandoned. And since I was going back to the script to make some of those minor changes in the first place, I thought, well, there's one or two jokes that I could punch up here that won't break the bank, because. And I'm going down a few tangents here, but we'll get to it, and we'll get to a larger point in a second. One of the concerns when we made this change is you had already done a lot of animation for the cartoon, and we didn't want to just throw away all of this work. And it happens from time to time, but generally speaking, you want to try to avoid, setting everything back down to zero. And so the goal is to try to leverage what we had already had and weave in the new content into the cartoon rather than throw away a lot of work. And so that was part of the balance too, is not in understanding what you have already animated, understanding the fact that the animatic has already been blocked out, and we basically have the whole show in a rudimentary form that that we see every week that you're working on. And so it was important not to lose the work that we had already developed. So that was my mindset going into it. I wanted to punch up a couple of the gags, if I could, integrate in the changes to Calamity and Leon's relationship, and while trying to strike a balance between adding new content in without losing a lot of content we had already made. So,
yeah.
Wow, that was a lot of words to explain something that ultimately was very simple. But no one will ever accuse me of being brief. Anyway, so I finished that work and I delivered it to you, and I thought, well, let's see if this works. Maybe it's boring and no one will ever care about this, but I wanted to see if I could get a little bit of your feedback without getting maybe too granular about what your thoughts are, and we can discuss it a little bit.
Sure. So Erica, you've broken up our script into 3 acts, so a lot of so when I'm working on scenes, it'll be in one. Lately, it's been Act 2, but Act 1 is pretty much where Calamity Jane loses her uncle. It's all about losing her in mentor, etc., and then moving on to the next phase of her life, which is Act 2, and Act 3 is obviously the resolution of whatever the main issue of the episode.
Right.
But even from the first script, and this is, I'm being completely rose-colored glasses fanboying here a little bit, but I always liked your script at the very beginning, so I didn't want to change anything if I could help it on my side. But I know we needed to do some changes, so here we are doing it. But we're in Act 1. One of my favorite lines is when Calamity Jane is watching her uncle pass away slowly, and she still manages to eke out a fashion request of, did we talk about the hat for one more second?
Yeah.
Now, you changed the line to, let's see, where is that? Let
It's
me
on.
find it
I think it's
again.
on page 3 or 4.
Page 3. Okay. Uh,
Since you're looking at it, I'll go ahead and open it up here too.
oh yeah. So sure, that's easy. Same line part.
Yeah.
And then she goes, "Are you still 100% in on that jacket? On the jacket?" I personally, I like the original line. I
Okay.
think it's,
All right.
I know sometimes for you on your side, you
Oops.
want to experiment, you want to throw in different flavors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what Dia already recorded was already good. I like this line. Don't get me wrong, but there's something about the way you wrote the first time where can we talk about it half one more second? It just feels more natural sounding to me
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. So I don't know what I'm sure I'm just guessing ahead. I don't think it's gonna be
Yeah.
a hill you want to die on. I don't think you really care about either line.
Well, So is this the right? Okay, yeah, this is the
It's
right
on
draft.
page 4. It's on
Yeah.
page 4, about 5 lines down. Or
So
so.
um, yeah. I think you're right now that you say it out loud. I like both lines, but since we already recorded the hat line, I mean, sometimes I overthink it. Uh, I guess it's interesting when I was reading it. I I think what I was thinking when I changed it to "Are you still 100% in on the jacket?" I
Mhm.
wanted to I wanted to soften it a little bit. Like, okay, so here was my thoughts. And again,
Mhm.
I'm fine leaving it the previous line. I just want to
Sure, but no,
take you
this is
through
the
my
fun part
process.
though.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
This is the whole point why I wanted to talk about it. So before, when she was just his sidekick, the nature of their relationship was different. Now that he's family, when I read that, can we talk about the hat one more time? It felt for some reason it felt more callous, knowing that
Oh.
she was talking to her uncle instead of a mentor,
Hmm.
right? And so I tried to soften it up a little bit. Like, are you still 100% on the jacket? Right? Like, it was the same kind of fashion sense that she had, but it wasn't quite like, I don't know. I thought the phrasing felt a little bit softer to me in my head.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I would appreciate it if you could have Dia
Recorded that line
record
anyway.
it, yeah, and then
Yeah.
we can play with it
Yeah,
and
we can put them both
see,
in. The
yeah.
thing, the beauty of Adobe Animate and how we've set up, the animation is it won't take long for me to resync the lip movements to saying this line. But
Hmm.
I mean, just off my gut, I like the original line a little
Yeah,
bit more than this one. But
I think that's fair.
yeah. But so there was that. But other than that, but yeah, like I can talk to Dia when I see her, see if we can do it. And yeah,
Yeah, I just, again, like, maybe I'm overthinking it. Our writers tend to do that. They'll look at words over and over and over again until they've lost meaning, and then they go, "Wow, it wasn't that good in the first place," and then and then they rewrite it. And this could be a situation where I was just overthinking it, but it was something that I was paying attention to as I added in some of the bits about, hey,
hmm
find Mitchell Winchester in Drago Gorge. I mean, her uncle is dying in her arms, and it is a cartoon, of course, but her relationship to him is different now because of that. And so
hmm
that was my thoughts, pure and simple.
hmm
I'm not like, it's not, as I always say, it's not a hill I'm going to die on. And so if
Yeah,
Dia
yeah.
does the new line and it's not as good as the original, then we stick with the original, and then that's fine, right?
hmm
So anyway, that is my thought, at least.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, Eric, we'll have debates sometimes, and for the most part, I mean, it always feels like we kind of go down the middle for the most part. But if one of us likes something a little bit more, we'll kind of lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this case, I am leaning more into that first line, but I want to try out there. I would like to try out the other line too, just to see, because maybe there is something to that line, and
Yeah.
who knows? And it's not that much of an effort to switch it around.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna move on to Act Two.
Okay.
Just and this is more conversational more than anything.
Yeah.
I liked everything you had in Act Two, but I know we had to change some things around, especially with Leon's death, and now that they
Right.
have more of a relationship. So okay, so we've seen this now as we walked through, as I've animated some parts for Calamity entry into the bar and stuff like that. All that stuff is pretty much essentially the same. But now I'm going to pose this question out there because we know that Mitchell runs a juice bar now.
Mm-hmm.
So when Calamity goes in, she asks for sarsaparilla,
Oh.
it's not a typical bar, right? And then he
Yeah.
talks about whiskey, three X's, but and I could be overthinking this way too much,
Nope. It's I
because he's
forgot to
running.
change it. I forgot to change it.
Oh,
That is an on me. I see. This is the challenge when you're going in and editing a script that you've already locked.
yeah, yeah,
Is you're trying to add in new stuff and already existing
yeah,
material. And
yeah.
I scroll up. I see it now. It's just a line I forgot to change. That is an error. I'll fix
Okay.
that. Yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh cripe. Yep, I forgot to change that line.
But here, that's the again, that's part of the banter. We go
Yeah.
back and
Well,
forth. But we
this
always
is
talk
why.
about,
Yeah, always have someone else
yeah, we
read your
cross
work.
check stuff
Yeah.
because I want to hear if there's if Eric, if you had a rationale for it, I would, you could just sell me on it.
Oh no. That is straight up a mistake. I'll fix that. That's like a 2 line fix, but I'll
Okay.
fix it. Yeah, it'll be a sarsaparilla, please, but it'll be like sarsaparilla. Is that like a mango or something? It won't be that bad, but
Oh, so you're
it'll
gonna make it
be
more juice related?
yeah, it'll just be juice related, right? And so
Okay.
I mean, this isn't really the point for exposition. Who cares? We'll figure out over
Okay.
time that it's a juice bar. So I don't need the Mitchell to go. This is the finest juice bar in all of the West, or whatever.
No, he doesn't have. Yeah.
We don't need that information right now. It's not
Hmm.
relevant.
Hmm.
It's more
Yeah.
relevant that we know that this is a place that Mitchell's is a bad comedian, that he operates the facility, and then Calamity's here at the direction of her uncle, and then the warhog attacks. Like that's really what needs
Okay.
to happen in this scene. So
Yeah.
it's like a 1 or 2 line change. That's just I forgot to change that line. Pure and simple.
Now
Yeah.
now on my side, this is purely superficial. We have to throw it out. We
Yeah.
have to throw it out. But I love drawing the pose of him going three X's. But it sounds like I don't know. I don't know if you're going to take that out completely now,
I don't know how
writing
we
wise,
keep it.
because
3 X's is a very specific thing for
like alcoholic.
booze. Yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah.
here, okay, now hear me out, because a lot of people will mistake it as a typical alcoholic bar. So he does say most folks come around here and ask for whiskey, three X's. But the only thing I got is three mangoes. I'm just pitching you ideas right now. Like,
Yeah,
how do we keep the three?
I
I
will
don't know.
see if I can find a way. I'll
Yeah,
think on
but
it. I'll think. I mean, I don't have to solve
without
it right now, but that's
yes,
something to keep in mind as I go in and fix that line. But yeah,
I'm just planting a seed over there.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
huh,
yeah.
I wonder.
I'll put it in there. Let's see if it germinates and grows into something fruitful.
Okay.
You see what I did there. That was a
um,
horrible pun. I'm terrible at puns,
no, it was really
so
good. I'm glad you had to inject the laughter so that way. Oh wait, there's a joke, and then I
I
had to
mean,
rewind a
look,
little bit. Then I went, oh, it is good.
Mitchell's
Yeah.
sense of comedy
Sorry
has
to
to come
delay.
from somewhere. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just one of those things, the thing is when you write, no matter how hard you try, you're always going to put a bit of yourself into every character, good, bad, or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Mitchell is my way of getting out all of my bad jokes into one place,
Mm-hmm.
one safe space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I will think about ways to justify that animation. I will say I'm not going to compromise the needs of the story to justify an animation pose.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We may have to throw it out. We have to throw it out. That's how it
Yeah,
is.
I
It's
mean,
not.
but of
Nothing's ever
course,
perfect.
yeah. The goal, of course, is to minimize that loss.
Yeah.
But let me think on it. I mean, I
Okay.
already have some ideas. I'll play around with it, and then, um, yeah, you head out on Thursday. Okay, I will. I have some time tomorrow. I'll try to get it to you tomorrow.
The beauty about this is this is all on our other voice actor Jeff, because it's Mitchell, so
Right.
we don't need the lines to be
Yeah,
solved.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, we have to kind of haggle with Jeff, and who knows? You don't know with Jeff
No,
how
he's a
how he's
wild
gonna react.
card.
I
You can
mean,
never tell
yeah, he's
with
a
Jeff.
wild card. I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll see. We'll see. As he's been a guest on our,
He
so
has
we didn't
been.
even know what to expect even
No,
even
exactly,
on our
exactly.
stream. So, okay, so this is more of a this is more of a philosophical question. I like what you wrote. I'm just posing the question out there because there's a death that's happened. Calamity
Hmm.
Jane has reacted to this death. She's really sad.
Hmm.
What I find interesting is how she relays this information to now. We could, I think it's kind of hinted at that Mitchell and Uncle Leon do go some ways back, but then when Calamity reveals this to Mitchell, it's kind of humorous and kind of dark in a way that Mitchell doesn't have any reaction. Like he's
Yeah.
almost like a robot, like, oh, okay, and then just keeps on his shtick. Was that on purpose,
Yeah, it
or was it
was.
because? Okay.
It
All right.
was on purpose. For purely pragmatic reasons, I want to move the scene along, and there'll be plenty of time to explore Mitchell's relationship with Leon in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to dwell on that in the scene, and maybe I'm going by too fast, but also at the same time, I I just thought it was silly to me in my mind. What's happening is Mitchell has got a routine
Yeah.
that he's
Yeah. And he does
working
not break
through, and he
character.
can't break
Yeah.
character. He's terrible at crowd work.
Yeah.
So he's got his tight five, and he has to get through it. And so here comes Calamity and completely throws a gear in the work, a wrench in the gears, or the works, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. My idioms are failing
Mm-hmm.
me right
Mm-hmm.
now. And what I'd like to direct is like Mitchell pauses for a second. And maybe I can add a bit of an action line in there. Like you can tell, like when he gets this news, he hangs, and he's trying to
Yeah.
decide what to do. Like,
Yeah.
but I'm in the middle of my set. I can't I've got this momentum. If I lose the crowd now, I'll never get him back. Like that's kind of what's going on in his head.
Yeah.
Um, so he pauses and then chooses to finish off his routine because that's what Mitchell would do, right? I mean, like for
Yeah.
him, and this goes into his backstory. There's a method to this madness, but so much of his existence is tied up into making people laugh
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
it causes
That's
him.
completely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It becomes this overriding force in his life. And again, that's something that we'll explore over the course of the series. But yeah, so my thoughts were there, and maybe I could probably add a little bit more detail into what the intention is. But he's doing his bits, he's telling his jokes, and then he gets this very somber news, and just very briefly, you see this chink in his armor, right? This recognition of this character,
Mm-hmm.
and then he makes the decision to keep going with his one routine because he can't. Because Mitchell, if nothing else, is incredibly insecure, and this is a moment that is exposing his vulnerability a little bit. I mean, a lot. This is someone he knew. I mean, and we don't know. We don't go into the pilot episode knowing how well that they knew each other, and that's something that
Yeah.
we'll tease out
Yeah.
and explore. But
Yeah.
in that moment, I wanted to just give a hint of his recognition of this without going into too much exposition. There's a lot that has to happen in the rest of the episode, and if we are literally just starting this momentum, and if we stop everything to detail all of the mystery of their relationship, then we
Yeah. Well,
lose
there's
the
no need for
pacing,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Especially
Not only that,
because
but
it's
mysteries.
not. Yeah, but yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, mystery's always good too. You don't have to answer everything.
Right, right.
There's something about letting the audience's imagination imagine stuff. Like imagine what's happening. You did that with me with the script because at first I went, huh? 'Cause I was like thinking like, is he gonna react to the death or not? He
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
And then it got me thinking like, well, what? And here, let
Right.
me throw this at you now. It sounds like what we're doing is you're talking about an actual. Like, what would you have now? I think I like, but I'm almost kind of unsettled with it too.
Mhm.
But I like that fact that it's kind of weird because we have, first of all, we have juxtaposition because we have Calamity who cries and licks her tears up. She emotes like what I would say, and with death, there's never there's the societal acceptance of death of how you're supposed to react, and to me, with Calamity Jane, it feels like an expected reaction, losing your uncle.
Yeah.
And then you just fast forward a few more minutes, and then you go see Mitchell, and he has a bag over his head. You can't see what he's
Right.
emoting.
Right.
So it actually adds more depth to his character, in my opinion, because he got the exact same news that Calamity did. He's a friend, so he has some relationship with the guy, and you can't tell what he's thinking at all.
Mhm.
In my head, like just working with you on this, like I was thinking in my head, like, man, it would be funny, like if we do like way down episodes, way far out, we actually do go back to this episode, and then like we do a zoom in inside the bag, and there's like one little tear that comes out. And he's still,
we do a
and he still
flashback of
performs.
some stuff.
Everything's done through like perspective of him, and you see one little tear for a second.
Yeah.
We don't, but all this time we don't know. So I guess what I'm saying, Eric, is I actually I like what you already have, and I almost like the pause is like another version. Like I don't know if I like that version as much as I do this version you already have. But this is why we're talking about it. Like I just find it.
Yeah, let me
interesting.
think on it while I'm working on that one line about the whiskey. And I mean, like, there's that joke that I always do wrong, but basically the gag is, what's the secret of comedy? And then the other person is supposed to respond, I don't know what is the secret. And then you're supposed to interrupt them and go, timing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so, a laugh, you can get a laugh if you pause for exactly the right number of milliseconds.
yeah.
And then you lose that laugh if you pause
If
for
it's
one
too, yeah,
millisecond too long or 1 millisecond
yeah,
too short. And there's a subjective feel to it, right?
yeah,
You can't honestly like guarantee, or rather, there's no math that you can do to go, okay, if we pause for 1.32 seconds, it'll maximize the laugh. It's a feel that you get from it, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, and that actually is a challenge in animation because you kind of have to figure that stuff out beforehand, right? I mean,
Yeah,
on a film set, you can do multiple takes and go, okay, hold for a
yep,
little bit longer. Oh, you held too long,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You don't have that luxury in animation. It's a different challenge, right?
yeah.
So
Well,
I'll
the beauty,
yeah.
yeah, just as well, but the beauty of animation is timing too. Like
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
it's, I think we'll be okay. In the end, when we kind of retackle the scene a little bit. Um, Again, all the drawings are there. Now it's a matter of us pushing the frames around a little bit and talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but I like I said, in general though, I find it. I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, it makes me think a lot more about the scene than I ever did before,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
kind of funny, because
Right.
it's his
Right.
take, it's his version of how to react to
Right.
a death in the
Exactly.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, and then after that, like, there's no more changes, because
okay,
from that point on, once the
it's all
Warhog shows up,
it's
it's
preserved,
basically
it's pretty much.
it's a full on sprint to the end of the episode, right?
Yeah,
There's not, and that's intentional. I don't see this is the nice thing about writing television in a lot of ways is, or maybe not necessarily television, but any sort of serialized or
hmm,
long term project. In a movie, all the necessary information for the movie has to occur within that time frame, whether it's
yeah,
90 minutes, 2 hours, 4 hours.
yeah,
All
yeah,
the information that is going to make you feel for these characters, that's going to help you understand these characters, justify their motives,
hmm,
contextualize the story, represent the rivalry. All of that has to be done in that span, right? And
hmm,
they try it, like in things like when they split up the two Pirates of the Caribbean movies and the Matrix movies, and when they do like back to back movies, and those movies are weaker because you're taking one 4.5 hour to 5 hour long movie and then just kind of splitting it in the middle and then forcing people to wait a year and a half to see the second
hmm,
half of it, right?
hmm,
Unless like you're an amazing writer like Quentin Tarantino, and Kill Bill 1 and Kill Bill 2 are really like
yeah.
they're one
They're self.
story, but they're so self-contained and thematically they're different and they're shot
Mm.
differently. I
And
mean,
there's a
but
definitive ending to the
yeah,
first
this is a
one.
definitive
Yeah,
ending to the first one. I mean, but Quentin
yeah,
Tarantino is one of the greatest working screenwriters. So anyway. Um, but with TV though, you can allow these things to grow over time. Now, I don't prescribe to the J.J. Abrams school of the mystery box. I find that offensive,
hmm,
because then what you get is things like Lost, which became very very polarizing. Because he
yeah,
comes in and he establishes all this stuff
hmm,
that he openly admits he didn't have any background for. There's
yeah,
a polar bear on the island. Why? I don't know.
yeah.
The
I
writers
smelled
will
that.
figure it up. Yeah.
I smelled that awfulness a mile away when that first episode was like, these guys, I don't think they know
Yeah,
what
and
they're
and you
talking
were
about.
right. Now Carlton Cuse and Damon Lindelof, who has not done a lot of good stuff in my mind. I like Carlton Cuse though. He's done some fun stuff. He did The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., which remains one of
Oh,
my
okay.
ultimate
That's a
cult
great
favorite
show.
show. Yeah.
Hmm,
Anyway,
hmm,
I think that they took what J.J. Abrams established and they did some fun stuff with it.
hmm,
But I think that if they had had a better plan, or at least had a better sense of what the show was earlier on, it would have felt a little bit more directed.
hmm,
I thought the ending of the show got really, really undirected because they knew they were wrapping it up, but they really hadn't tied together a lot of the threads, and so it started to feel really rushed towards the end, right?
Yeah, I'm glad I never got caught up with that one.
Yeah,
I live vicariously through my friends, and
yeah,
all of my friends that watched it, this it was the same reaction, just disappointment
yeah. I mean, like the first
watching
three
it.
seasons were phenomenal, and then you could
Hmm.
tell starting in season four, especially when they went to fewer episodes. Lost is an
Hmm.
interesting. We're getting something off topic here. Lost is an interesting artifact, in the same way that the X Files was an interesting artifact. The X Files was the last show, really fan based show that existed before the internet. But the X
Hmm.
Files
Hmm.
straddled the creation of the internet. It existed before the internet and it existed after the internet
Yeah, it
in a
was really
significant
interesting
way,
show.
right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you can say that too about shows like Voyager, but those are a lot more culty. They're the smaller audiences, generally speaking. The X
Hmm.
Files was so mainstream, so pop culture. To watch that show transition from the beginning of it to the end of it, and the other thing too is the X Files is grounded in reality, whereas Voyager takes place off in a spaceship in the Delta Quadrant,
Yeah.
right?
So you can be isolated and do
Ex-
your own little
exactly,
mythology.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so the X Files is grounded in modern technology, and so to watch that show change and evolve as society was changing and evolving
Hmm.
was really
Hmm.
interesting. In a similar way, Lost kind of straddled. There was TV before hyper serialized and TV after hyper serialized. You know,
Hmm.
you see shows like Twin Peaks from time to time, which were super serialized, but they
Hmm.
were very rare just because of the nature of how people consumed television. You didn't have DVRs, you didn't have Netflix, you didn't have anything
Yeah.
like that. You would, if you didn't see the episode when it aired, you had no idea when it was going to show back up again, right? And so people tended to shy away from serialization because if they missed one episode, then all of a sudden they didn't understand what was going on, they'd get bored and they'd leave.
Hmm.
Lost, Lost popularized and mainstreamed the notion of hyper serialization. And to watch the show kind of like going, yes, this does work, to, oh God, now we've got this giant story that we have to resolve because it was on the cusp of that transition is actually really interesting when you're looking at it from a purely narrative standpoint, when you're looking at it from the
Hmm.
standpoint of how the showrunners and the staff were putting together episodes and how they created this monster that got away from them a little bit, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I still liked Lost. I even liked the last season, which was highly controversial or dividing, right?
Hmm.
I enjoyed it. I did, ultimately. I thought the ending was cool.
Hmm.
But sometimes I get into that spiritual, mystical stuff. I don't believe it at all in reality,
Hmm.
in my day to day reality.
Sure.
But in
But
television
you
and
have a
movies, I love.
you like the
Yeah,
romanticized aspect of it, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
enjoyed that aspect of it. Anyway, so that was a huge detour. But to bring it all home, I didn't feel that we needed to do a lot of work.
Hmm.
The exposition can come over time naturally when it makes sense, right?
Yeah. If we even need it at all.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. I mean, we know what it is, and if an episode or a storyline comes up that we need to reveal a little bit more about the background of how Mitchell and Leon knew each other, then we'll go into
sure.
that, right?
Sure.
You know, you run the risk of seeing how the sausage is made. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the John Wick franchise. I mean, I
Hmm.
do. I liked all four movies.
Yeah, they're great. Hmm.
But from a story standpoint, such that there is a story in John Wick, the first one remains the best.
Yeah,
Um,
because it's the most simplest narrative. It's just
yeah,
it's a revenge. It's really a revenge movie,
yeah,
but it just as a domino effect, it's still revenge
yeah,
for four movies. You know,
yeah. And the nice thing, the thing that I really dug was the mysteriousness of the guild, the mysteriousness of there's no, yeah.
the world building. Yeah,
But then
yeah,
when all of it gets exposed, it kind of drifts
yeah.
into silly a couple of
Hmm.
times, right?
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
fine because I'm not watching John Wick for the pathos. I'm watching it for amazingly choreographed fight sequences.
Sure,
Um,
and really great. There's some. I think I've talked to you about this. I think offline, but I love the design and the
oh
packaging for
yeah,
John Wick.
yeah,
The color choices, the direction of it. is terrific.
Yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
iconic.
Yeah. So anyway, I you know yeah, I think leaving a little bit of mystery is fun. I mean,
Hmm.
to cite another example of in television specifically was the X Files. Um, Now the X Files went on so long, the mystery started getting long in the tooth, and they had
Yeah.
to answer some of the questions and ask new questions, and they succeeded and failed in varying degrees. But like in the early days, the mystery of what happened to Mulder's sister was awesome. I mean,
Hmm.
that was what a
Hmm.
great mystery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so the problem is though you couldn't after everything Mulder saw over the course of the show, you couldn't hold on to that mystery, and so they had to ultimately respond to it and answer it and bring closure to it. And
Yeah.
they succeeded in to a degree. I don't think they handled it perfectly, but I mean, there was at least a resolution and a conclusion to it, and I
Hmm.
appreciated
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
But anyway, um, and you were concerned that we weren't going to be able to make 30 minutes
No, I
of this
wasn't.
topic.
I thought we were just going to talk about hat versus a jacket, and then like move on pretty much. But no,
I,
there's a. But then again, a lot of this was sitting through me. Even when we were talking, like, yeah, blah 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 blah. It just started creeping
mm-hmm,
in. Like, yeah, I
mm-hmm.
need to talk to Eric about this a little bit more, especially with with Mitchell's reaction. I think I wasn't expecting it to take talk about it this long, but it's cool. That's all fun. That's all fun.
No, but
So
I mean it's a good point, and I'll think about whether I really want to. Honestly, I don't. I think that that's actually out of my domain, right? I think I could maybe put a bit of an action line in there. Mitchell pauses as if he's been shocked or stunned, but then continues on with his routine. I can add that action line in there, but I think the timing of that is 100% up to you. It's
yeah, sure.
it's on you to inform the actual physical reaction of Mitchell. I can layer in some things. I can add dialogue and that kind of stuff. But
Yeah,
ultimately,
we'll have.
you're responsible for bringing them to life, right?
You know what we'll do? I mean, maybe one of our streams on the road, when we get to that scene again and it's revoiced, a little bit with the new lines and stuff like that, we'll go to that scene and I'll do a couple of different takes on it. Because the beauty again of Adobe Anime is you can just delete or add frames and you can
Right,
just talk about
right.
it on the
Yeah,
fly for fun.
that is
But
definitely useful. There's no question
yeah,
about it, as opposed to like having to do the old style hand animation on
yeah,
paper, right?
yeah. So that's good. Here's another funny thing. That's kind of I find kind of I find it funny is like how we're talking about this scene, and it'll no one's people. If anybody, when people watch the episode, I don't know how many people are even gonna
I don't know. Who knows?
understand how much depth and talk we talk. Just about that one little couple of
Oh, I
lines.
know,
Like
I
how much
know. I mean,
so funny.
it's I mean, it's about a what 17 to 20 minute long episode, I think.
Yeah, I think
Um,
around there. I think it might be less now at this point. We'll trim it down
well, let's
probably,
see.
but yeah,
My,
around
my
there.
my page count right now is 22. So so it should be about 17 to 20 23
Mm-hmm.
minutes. So honestly, about the length of a regular cartoon.
Man, I
And
can't believe it was that long. Jeez.
when we started this, we were just going to do like these really short Adult Swim
Yeah.
style 10-minute things. But then as our world grew, we wanted to tell more interesting stories, and we
Hmm.
we just kept kind of adding. And
Yeah.
then the pilot episode ended up being, and maybe the pilot episode, like the Encounter at Farpoint, the first episode of TNG was a 2-hour episode.
Mm-hmm.
In most of the series was 1 hour episode. So who's to say that this isn't just a double issue, or
Yeah.
a double feature?
Yeah.
Anyway, I lost the thread on that one. So we were talking
I kind
about the
of.
length is about a half
Yeah.
hour long, and
Hmm.
um, well, I'll go back and rewatch the recording later and go, oh, that's what we were talking about. We have it on recording for posterity. But anyway, to go back even another step farther, yeah, I mean, oh, that's what it was. I remember now. I got there. See, I just had to wait for those neurons to reconnect.
Hmm.
Um, um, the yeah, we spent a good half hour talking about a single line of dialogue, and we kind of negotiated that for almost every single line of dialogue in a 22-page script, right? I mean,
It's really funny.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
But,
so if people watch, if we when we finish the episode and we people see it, and they like it and they want to learn more, they're going to be able to come back and watch these. And we've been doing this for multiple years now. I think over 3 years now, and it's all been about. I mean, admittedly, most of what we're talking about is just geek stuff. It's basically just a podcast, but you're still animating, and we still talk about the show. Like tonight was 100% about the episode.
100%. Mm-hmm.
I think people will be like, "Wow, they spent way too much time thinking about this," and it's not unusual. Like one of my favorite stories is Bill Lawrence talking about his pilot for Scrubs. He I think wrote. It's all fuzzy now, so I'm not going to remember the exact number, but in upwards of 30 drafts of the pilot episode, he basically started. He, for whatever reason, has a lot of friends in the medical industry, and he started by just interviewing all of them and getting all of their stories, and he made this massive Bible of all these medical stories. And then he started like finding threads and personality types, and started creating these characters that were amalgam of other people that he either heard stories about or that he knew, right? And I mean, he lived and breathed JD and Turk and Dr. Cox and oh god, it's been so long, I don't remember, and Carla, and I don't remember all of the characters' names anymore. It's been too long, but he lived and breathed those characters for so long. They were a part of him. He could probably, if he saw them on the street, he could talk to them. He would be so familiar with them. Anybody who writes a pilot for a television show always feels that way, because there's so much at stake in the pilot. You have to create this world. You have to introduce these characters. You have to justify why an audience wants to see it. You have to hint at things to come, and you also have to make maybe not the most complicated story, but at least an entertaining story. And in the case of what we're doing, and in the case of Scrubs, you have to do it in 22 to 27 minutes, right? Now, with the advent of streaming, those numbers are a lot more flexible. But generally speaking, comedies fall in the realm of a half hour, and dramas fall in the realm of an hour. And so pilot television scripts are intensely challenging to write. And you have to know and breathe all of these characters. You have to know what they're thinking before they say it. All of that stuff. They have to be real for you for the pilot to work. Because if they're not real to you in the pilot, they're not going to be real to you in the second episode. They're not going to be real to you in the third episode.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody needs to have everybody needs to be living and breathing and have some sort of offering for the story, even how minuscule it is. I mean, we've talked about this way back, like even with background characters, in Dry Gulp. I mean, we've crafted stories for each of them. We want them to have their own lives. It's running parallel to what Calamity's doing with her life. Yeah. It leads for a long conversation like this, but I think it's well worth it in the end.
It's absolutely.
It adds more fuel as we're working through it. So.
Yeah, and I'm always writing, and I mean, I do it professionally, and I do it just as a hobby, and I'm working on a different pilot for kind of an action show, and it's interesting to go through that process, because I just finished the rough draft, and I've just started the editing process, and I don't know if it's a weakness or if it's just the way I write. When I finish the first draft of anything I write, every character sounds exactly like me, because it's in a lot.
That's but you're writing from your voice first.
Right, exactly. You're sort of, you have to get through and get the words out of your head and get them on paper. And so what I'm doing right now in the new draft is I'm trying to find the voice of these characters. I know what I need them to say when I need them to say it. Now I'm going back and making sure that they're saying it in their voice instead of my voice, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting that happens as you start learning characters more and more and more is, and this is such a cliche, but it's also really true. You write, and you'll write something in your voice, and you go, no, he wouldn't say that, right? Like that's totally wrong. He'd say this. They really do start speaking to you. They really do start telling you, like, once you they become a part of your lifeblood. It almost becomes second nature to write them. And it's interesting too, because it's not just writers that experience this. The actors who play these characters, once they've played them for a long time,
they occupy that
character. Yeah. And you know, it's a fool writer who doesn't listen to an actor who's played a character for 10 years, right? Now maybe you don't agree with everything that they're saying, but that actor lives and breathes that character as much as you do, you know?
You have to at least give an ear, because it could embellish something that you didn't even think about. So,
anyway, we've been going for quite a while now.
Hey, I like streams like this where I don't have to do any doodling. We're just hanging out and talking too. I mean, that's very different from our typical streams, but hey, once in a while we got to do it, you know?
Yeah. Well, we got there. I wonder if anybody's actually going to stay for a 45-minute long rant about screenplays. I mean, people listen to it on podcasts. I don't know that they want to watch it on a video, but I mean, this is, you know, this to me, this is what I love about writing is the headiness of it. I mean, even with something silly like Calamity Jane, or something as kind of pulpy as this thing that I'm working on, the only way it's good is if you care about it like you're writing the most important drama that's ever been written. Right? It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how silly or serious it is. You have to love it like it's your child. And again, I know that's super cliched, but it really is true.
It's true. Absolutely. But with all that being said, I'll be doing next week. I have a couple of scenes we can work on and get back to our normal scheduled time of talking about Monster Hunter, Build-Outs, and Load-Outs. Don't worry.
Right. I mean, we still haven't talked about God of War, which I started playing. We should talk about the show Beef with Steven Yeun and Ali Wong.
Yeah, Meet and I watched the first episode. We haven't got past it yet, though, but we'll eventually find time.
Yeah, I just finished it. It's great. I have a lot to say on it. Oh my god, yeah.
All right.
You need to catch up. You need to watch Picard season 3 so we can talk about Picard season 3. The last episode premieres on Thursday. Super fan servicey. I mean, it is so much of what happens in the series or season doesn't make any sense, or the justification for it is so flimsy. But it is just the most fan servicey thing that has ever fan serviced, and I am so there for it, because I love The Next Generation remains one of my favorite TV shows ever, and seeing the gang back together again for one last hurrah. All right, you got me. You win this round, Star Trek.
That's what kind of got me in the first season of Picard, is just seeing Jean-Luc Picard himself, like the character just show up. That was enough for me to keep me hooked to someone. Yeah. But we'll get into more. Season 2, I hit the eject button because of the Board Queen.
Yeah,
so we'll go into more details
that.
on that.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm going to start watching. Now that I finished Beef, I'm going to get through Season 2. Because they don't... Season 3 does not reference Season 2 at all. But the Board Queen... That's great. But the Boar Queen is a character in season 3. I'm sorry. So.
Well, you know what though? From what you're describing, and trying to avoid spoilers, it sounds like if they're getting the band back together, you have to have the Boar Queen.
You kind of do to a certain extent. Yeah.
I get it. They're linked. Picard, Locutus, and
Locutus.
They're all linked.
It is. Yes. And it's actually pretty clever, actually. So that aspect of how they're using the Borg and what the underlying threat for the season is pretty cool. I've enjoyed that. So
okay. So wait, you skipped season 2? You just went right to season 3?
I went right, for work. So I did a lot of season 2 or a few season 2 articles. But I didn't sit down and watch the season beginning to end.
Okay.
But
all right.
I've done a lot of I did a lot of articles for the first 3 episodes, and I actually ended up enjoying it. And so I just kept watching it, right? And so now I'm hooked. That's what happened there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Cool.
But
All right.
anyway,
Well,
so we're at 50 minutes now, so we'll wrap it up. As always, please consider heading on over to Calamity Jane. Don't consider, do it. Head on over to CalamityJane.rocks. That'll
man,
take you to our
so
Patreon website.
bossy tonight.
Yeah,
Jeez.
super bossy, and join us. Help us make this cartoon a reality. And by
He's swinging
doing
to the board
so,
right now.
that's right.
He's
I
swinging the.
will. I will talk more about the subtleties of screenwriting. And James will still animate silly drawings, and we'll all have a
Yes.
good time. So join us, subscribe, help us make this a reality. I've given you an order. You can check us out on Facebook as well. We, generally speaking, post updates about what we're doing on the stream, and any announcements you'll see on Facebook. You can also head over to Twitter at Jane Salamander. We do 3 tweet stories every week where we tweet some goings on or another in the life of Calamity Jane from her Twitter account. And I think that's a bit. That's it. I know you're going to be out of town, but you're still going to be around to do the stream next Monday, or will you be back by that point?
Yeah, I'll be back by that point.
Okay.
So
Okay. Great.
all systems go. So
Lovely.
you
And I'll
know,
be around for next Monday as well. So we'll see y'all next Monday at the same Calamity time, same Salamander channel. Stay safe out there, everybody. Good night.
good night.